Welcome back to This is Baseball. My name is Brandon Johnson. Thank you for tuning in today. It is September, which means that we are in the home stretch of the Major League Baseball regular season. And with that, I think we should have a reminder of the current playoff picture because I think out of the 6 divisions in the league, I would say all but one of them are really still up for grabs. I think if I look at the American League Central, the Detroit Tigers have a 9-game lead on the Kansas City Royals. That's the biggest margin in the league right now as far as the first place team and the second place team in a division. And I don't see either of those teams flipping spots. And I feel like the Tigers are going to hold on to that one. But looking around the rest of the league, things are pretty close. The American League East, Toronto Blue Jays, who kind of took over that division around the halfway point, still have the lead in the East, but they only sit 2.5 games ahead of both the Yankees and the Red Sox. So really tight division there. We'll get into some matchups later as far as scenarios where we could see the standings kind of flip. But let's go through the rest of the divisions. So American League West, Houston, who got hot earlier this season. I always say Houston is inevitable, and they're at the top of the American League West. They sit 3 games ahead of the Seattle Mariners, and they're 4.5 games ahead of the Texas Rangers. Rangers have played probably the best baseball in the league right now. They are 8-2 over the last 10 games and just rolling through opponents with a lot of injuries stacking up, and they're just kind of overcoming the odds and playing great baseball. And they've found themselves right back into a playoff race, not only looking at the division, but have a legitimate chance at getting a hold of one of those wild card spots as well if they continue to play the way that they are. Moving over to the National League, in the East, the Phillies have a 5.5 game lead over the Mets. Brewers, who have the best record in all of baseball at 85-54, are 5 games ahead of the Cubs. And then the tightest division in the National League West is the Los Angeles Dodgers, who have a 2.5 game lead over the San Diego Padres. Now let's look at the wild card standings real quick. The American League wild card standings are pretty crowded. You have the Yankees and Red Sox who are tied for the first and second spot there. Seattle, who is the third spot, but they have the Texas Rangers, who I just talked about, who are a game and a half out of the wild card, and the Kansas City Royals, who are 2.5, and the Rays, who sit in 3.5. Rays are on a 5-game win streak right now, 8-2 over their last 10. So it is tight. Everybody in the American League that is kind of a fringe team right now, they have all got to keep the gas pedal going and play the best baseball that they can. The National League wild card isn't as tight as the American League. The Cubs with the 1 spot, Padres with the 2, Mets holding on to that 3rd spot, but the Mets are 5 games ahead of the Cincinnati Reds and San Francisco Giants. So barring a collapse by the Mets, I think that the National League playoff picture is mostly figured out, I would say, as far as who's going to be there. I think those 6 teams, Milwaukee Brewers, Philadelphia Phillies, Los Angeles Dodgers, Chicago Cubs, San Diego Padres, New York Mets, I think those are the 6 teams. It's just a matter of who's going to be the division leaders and who's going to be the wild card teams, because there's still a lot to unpack there, and we still have about 25 games to go for every team. So going to be a fun month of September as usual, but there are some key matchups going into the weekend that I wanted to look at. I talked about the Texas Rangers, who have been on a hot streak and sit only 4.5 games out of the American League West standings, only a game and a half behind the Seattle Mariners in the third wildcard spot. The Rangers host the Astros going into this weekend, so they'll get a chance to go head-to-head against Houston, and those are the most important games because those are the ones where you can directly impact the standings and go from a 4.5 game deficit to being a game and a half back, or you can all of a sudden find yourself 6.5 games back because you didn't take care of business. And these are obviously important games for the Rangers and the Astros because the Astros only have a narrow lead there. Not only do they have the Rangers, they have the Seattle Mariners that are breathing down their neck as well. So I actually think this is the most compelling series of the weekend, the Astros and Rangers, just because it's so important that both of them win. And it's either going to be, okay, the Rangers had a fun little hot streak for a little bit, and now they're back where they were, and we're not really worried about them anymore. Or all of a sudden, whoa, we need to pay attention to the AL West race because there's 3 teams within a game and a half of each other. But just to stay on the Rangers schedule for a little bit, so they host the Astros for those 3, but then they host the Brewers. Obviously, the Brewers are the best team in the league right now, so not easy. And then they go on the road and play the Mets, who also tough series, and then go back, play Houston again. So over the next couple weeks, they have 6 games against Houston. So I think by the middle of September, we're really going to know where the Rangers stand in this postseason conversation. They're either going to be well in it and maybe have a hold of a playoff spot, or by September 17th, when the final game against the Astros ends, we're like, okay, goodbye Rangers. Because that's a little bit of a gauntlet of a stretch for the Rangers. In that same stretch, looking at the Astros schedule, they're currently playing the New York Yankees. They lost to the Yankees last night, have 2 more against them. Then obviously go into Texas, play the Rangers, but then they play the Blue Jays. Blue Jays have an important series this weekend as well against the Yankees that we'll get into here in a second. Go on the road against the Braves, back home, host the Rangers. Once they're done with the Rangers, they play the Mariners. Mariners breathing down the Astros' neck as well. So this is why September baseball is so fun, because you just have to have the gas pedal on. There's no breathing room anywhere. So really, as it has been for the last few years, watching the American League West down the stretch, I think is going to be one of the most entertaining postseason races. It's got a 3-team race, and the Astros, Mariners, and Rangers. So we're going to follow that one pretty closely over the next couple weeks, because I think we'll have some clarity by the 2nd or 3rd week of September. But let's hop over to the American League East. I just talked about the Blue Jays and what they have going on. They have to play the Yankees this weekend. They're 2.5 games up on them. Obviously important for the same reason that Astros-Rangers series is important. But then you play the Astros and Orioles. Orioles are out of it, obviously. But then you play the Rays. If you're the Blue Jays, Rays, they have their eye on a wild card spot. So they're going to be playing for something. Same thing. You finish up with the Rays and you go into Kansas City. Blue Jays lost a series to Kansas City earlier this year at home. Kansas City also right on the cusp of a postseason spot. That's going to be September 20th or 23rd. And then, you think it's done there? No, it's not. The Blue Jays then play the Red Sox. Red Sox also 2.5 games behind the Blue Jays as I speak. Big series there. Then who knows what the standings look like at that point after you get done playing all the teams that I just mentioned. Then you close the season against the Rays, who just said could be trying to hold on to a wild card spot or could be done. Now let's talk AL Central and kind of zero in on the Royals, because as I said earlier, I think the division itself is over. I think Detroit is the team to be crowned American League Central champs. But I was looking at the Royals schedule a couple of days ago. This was after a bad series loss to the Detroit Tigers, that a series that I felt was extremely important. Royals they now have 25 games left, but they have 8 series remaining. They sit 2.5 games behind Seattle. Texas jumped ahead of them. 5 of the series they play, in my opinion, are winnable. They play the Angels twice. They've already dropped a game to the Angels, where their offense basically fell asleep. But they also see the Twins, Guardians, and A's. Twins give them a little bit of trouble, and I think the Royals typically match up better against the Guardians. The A's, they close the season against, but they also have a couple of really tough series coming up. They have to play the Phillies in Philadelphia. Philadelphia, division leader in the National League East. And more importantly, after that, they host the Seattle Mariners, a team that they, in my opinion, need to sweep that series, because I think should the Royals play well up to that point, that could be the deciding series between who's the third wild card team and who's on the outside looking in. But the Royals have to find some better consistency down the stretch. Their starting pitching has kind of taken a step back. They've only had 8 quality starts over their last 40 games. They've gone from having some of the best starting pitching to not so great starting pitching since the All-Star break. But on the flip side, their offense went from being the worst to one of the best offenses. So getting all of that to work together is going to be huge for the Royals. You look at somebody like Seth Lugo, who was a big conversation of, are the Royals going to trade him or what are they going to do with him? They end up extending him, and Seth Lugo's basically been one of the worst pitchers in the league since that extension. He's had an ERA over 8, hasn't really been able to get out of the 5th inning, if he even gets to the 5th inning. So need Seth Lugo to figure it out, because obviously he's a part of this team, but he's a part of the future. So you don't want him to be negatively impacting the Royals the way that he is. Because the way I see it right now, you're almost better off just trading Seth Lugo at this point, because he's been a negative since the deadline. So let's jump over to the National League. I want to start with the NL Central, and I want to look at the Cubs specifically, because the Cubs are chasing the Brewers, and I'm looking at what the Cubs have going on right now. They currently are playing the Braves. They've already won that series. They have one more game against them today. They host the Nationals, play the Braves again, Rays, Pirates, Reds, Mets, Cardinals. And it's a pretty light schedule for the Cubs, pretty favorable for them. I will say, I do think that it's a crime that the Cubs and Brewers don't have a single series against each other in the month of September. I think the balanced schedule that MLB has put together is really cool, where all teams play each other at least one series. However, I do think that the month of September needs to be more division heavy than it is, because I think that while obviously the Cubs are playing the Cardinals, Reds, and Pirates, and yeah, I guess there's a scenario where it could have been Cubs Cardinals coming down to the wire, and the final series of the season could have been an all-time classic, but I don't think, I know I've talked about me thinking the Brewers are going to fall off, but the Brewers have been a good team for a while, and we thought the Cubs would be good. So I would think that you would want the Cubs and Brewers to be meeting each other late in the season, knowing that there's likely big playoff implications. The last matchup between the Cubs and Brewers was August 21st. So it'll be 6 weeks once the end of the season happens since the Cubs and Brewers have met up with each other. I think that's a miss in the schedule making. And honestly, same thing's kind of happening with the National League West, where the Padres and Dodgers met up with each other 6 times in 9 games. And that final matchup was August 24th. So again, it'll be about 6 weeks since the Dodgers and Padres have seen each other. So they're not going to have that late September super important matchup between two teams that, again, going into the season, were obviously going to be battling it out for the National League West. So I think we've got to rethink some of the schedule making with how things are shaking out. And I know you can't really predict the playoff picture, but I think we got to do better here. It can't be 6 weeks. I just think that the month of September, they need to figure out how to make just everybody. It's just, this is the division. The divisions are playing each other. Same with how they used to do interleague play, where June was interleague play. Obviously, 15 teams in each league. You can't have everybody playing a division series at the same time. There will always be an interleague matchup, but we got to focus that better. We managed to have a head-to-head matchup between the 1 and 2 in the National League East, though. Phillies host the Mets on September 8th through 11th. So you have a 4-game series there that is going to be important. I think it's going to go in the Phillies' favor, but let's just pretend that they meet and the Mets are 5.5 games back and the Mets sweep, or the Mets take 3 out of 4. Then all of a sudden, National League East gets super interesting down the stretch. And the more drama around the league, the better. And this is why I love baseball. And I know that every league really has these division races, these playoff races down the stretch, but there's so many moving parts in the month of September in baseball. There's games every day. Everything is important, obviously all season long, but it feels like once you hit that September 1st mark, then it's go time, and there's really no margin for error. And a lot of it is going to come down to the wire. And you have this great sprint that we have into what I think are the best playoffs in professional sports in the month of October. So we've got very, very fun and entertaining couple months left of the 2025 season. So buckle up, stay tuned. I'll be following along very closely, watching all of these races, seeing where there's any movement and making sure to focus on that. So thank you for listening to the show today. I will see you next week.